We're reviewing Smile 2 today. So this one, overall, I did really enjoy. Let's sort of break it down. So this movie, what I found interesting is the opening was pretty strong. It opens with Joel, our character from the last one, and it essentially picks up exactly where last one left off, just a few days later. Joel saw his friend kill herself, and this picks up, I believe it was 6 days after when he witnessed the murder. So his time's coming up. It's running out. And of course, he's a cop. And what's interesting about this opening is he tries to use his resources as a cop. He finds these criminals that he thinks are deserving of it. So he finds two criminals, for one is going to be witness to the other. Well, it doesn't work out that way. He kills one. There's a shootout. The second one dies, and there's sort of the innocent kid who's, as far as he knows, is probably just a junkie, and he's the one that witnesses the murders instead of the criminal. So it's a chaotic situation. He leaves, he pulls out of there, and he ends up getting run over. So he ultimately did not survive, but he did pass it on. So there's just sort of this eerie opening to this movie, where the first one, it kind of took a little bit to pick up, where this one just dove right into it. So I immediately liked the story, tone, and pacing a lot better, just based off of the opening scene. And so Lewis, Sky Riley's friend, that she knew from a while back, she reaches out to him. She is this pop star. She's very much pop star in the movie. This isn't too dissimilar to the movie Trap. Trap, it took place all in the venue, but the pop star lifestyle was sort of implemented into Trap, whereas this movie has a much more of a presence in the movie. Her lifestyle is how they incorporate the killings and what she witnesses and the locations of when things are happening. So they really use the source material for, as far as this character that they've designed is, they used everything about that to sort of incorporate neat little things into this movie. And so she's trying to get drugs. She goes to her friend Lewis, and of course we see him from the trailer, because if you've seen any movie in the past few months, you've seen a trailer for Smile 2, and you've seen Lewis kills himself. So this wasn't a surprise at all, because we've seen it 100 times already. So he killed himself. Sky Riley witnesses that, and she's now the character in the movie that's being haunted, basically. And Lewis, he gets some screen time throughout the first half, being the one that she sees. But the second half also changes to where there are other sort of unknown characters seen. And so it kind of pivots from where the first one, where there's really one face. It had one face pretty much the whole time in the first movie. And that's not the case in this one. So that made things interesting. It made things different. It changed the tone, and it changed the expectations. There wasn't predictability to it. I think the predictability that we assume, what we would call predictability, is because of what we see in the trailer. So if we went into this movie without seeing a trailer at all, or should I say, for those of you who did go into this movie without seeing a trailer, you probably had a much more enjoyable experience than I did, because the trailer did spoil some things, but at the end of the day, I really did like this. So moving on, almost the first half, it's basically she sees Lewis. She doesn't know what's going on. She's talking to people, trying to, everyone thinks she's crazy. It's sort of the same blueprint that we had in the first one, just different surroundings. And so her friend Gemma, that they had this big falling out, and she hasn't reached out to in a while, but she reaches out to her. She comes over to her apartment, and they're reconnecting, and she's helping Sky sort of cope with what's going on. She's just being a friend. And so those were nice scenes to see. And her husband, Paul, or fiance, I don't know if they said she was already married or not, but our boyfriend, Paul, we're just going to call him the boyfriend. That's actually Ray Nicholson, Jack Nicholson's son. So he does get a minimal role in this movie. He's seen a couple flashbacks, but he does a pretty good job with what he is given. And as everything's progressing, eventually what happens as we get toward our third act and climax is she's supposed to go to this fundraiser, and she's seeing Paul appearing, and she sort of just makes a fool of herself. She can't tell what's reality and what's not. And this lays her in the hospital. And what's interesting, the things that happen, we're throwing a complete curveball later on, but she witnesses her mother killing herself in this hospital. And when she leaves, she runs out into the street. Gemma is there to bring her coffee or whatever, and Gemma says, "I'm driving." So the two of them take off, and by now, she's going to meet with this guy that she met at a bar where he said, "I have a plan how to get rid of this thing once for all." She said, "Okay." First, she said no at first, then after her mother killed herself, now she's agreeing to the plan. So that's where she's on her way to. But she gets a call from Gemma, even though Gemma's supposed to be sitting right there, saying that she didn't even know she was going to answer the call. And so now we're realizing every scene she's had with Gemma so far, which is a fair amount for this movie, has all been this other entity. And so it sort of changes the perspective of how you view this movie by the whole what's reality and what's not concept. It's sort of, that's our first curveball, is seeing all this going on. And so she eventually gets to this location with this other guy she's met, and they're trying to exercise, for lack of a better term, this entity. And she gets locked in this freezer. This thing is where, or in this room, I should say, this entity has a couple different forms in this room. And this is where the character design is actually a little creepy. This movie, so far, has been genuinely creepy compared to the first one. The first one, I wasn't the biggest fan of. I thought the story was fine. I thought the story was intriguing. But some of the acting, some of the writing, some of the scene placements, I just found parts of it laughable. And I wasn't trying to make fun of it. It was directed or scripted in a way where I just couldn't take it seriously enough, as obviously I probably should have. But this movie, the second one, the tone is just completely different. I took it very seriously. It was genuinely creepy. There were scary moments. So this movie feels like a complete tonal shift compared to the first one, which I thought was amazing. I was very excited to see that they did everything more. Everything was creepier. Everything was more layered. There were more complexities. There were more intricacies to the characters' stories. There are more characters. So I just loved everything about it, really. And as we sort of get back on track to this final act, even though we get these scary images with this entity, we get another curveball. In, I would say this is the second one for this movie, is Skyler wakes up on stage, which her whole fear was going on stage with this thing. And she wakes up, she's on stage, and we see her mother in the crowd, who supposedly killed herself earlier in the film. So now not only do we know that all of her scenes with Gemma weren't real, now the past 30 minutes of the movie have not been real. So this really just changes your perspective, and it can be confusing. I could see people saying how they were just confused by this movie, and I totally get it. Not knowing what's real or not can become tiring and exhausting to watch, especially in the way it's portrayed in this movie. So I can totally see that. I just found the rest of it interesting enough to make up for that, for me. And so as she's on stage now, she's seeing this thing, and we get to see it crawl out of the husk or whatever. It's now taking the same form, final form, as we saw in the last one. And so, even though the design is mostly pretty much the same, it is a lot larger, or at least it seemed that way, because in the last movie, it took place in this living room. Now it's taking place on stage. So even though the audience can't see it, Sky can. And so the figure just seemed bigger. I don't know if it was just because of the background they used while filming, but it just seemed like it was a lot bigger, which could be a story point, is it's growing and getting bigger. So I don't know if that was the intent, or if the CGI scaling was just a little different. I don't know what it is, guys. It just looked bigger to me. And so ultimately, Sky Riley does die. She commits suicide because of this thing. But there are now thousands of witnesses. And that's where the movie ends. So we'll see what's going on with the third. I'm sure they'll make one. I'll be surprised if Paramount doesn't go ahead with a third film. And right now, I think it could just be absolute chaos. I mean, there is no expectation for where the story's going. It's just going to be complete insanity. And from going from the first movie with just a handful of characters, with just a couple people dying, to now several people in the second one with being a much larger scale scene going on, to now thousands of people are going crazy and trying to kill others and getting others to be killed. And I just think that this will be a completely interesting trilogy if they move forward with the third, to see how far it's come from the first to the second to the third. So we don't know they're making one. I hope they do, because I'm intrigued now. I think their concept they have set up for it is fascinating and intriguing. So we'll see what happens, guys. Overall, I like this one. I liked it a lot better than the first one. I'm seeing mixed reviews online. Some people still prefer the first one. I just don't. And that's okay. So if you see this one, if you like it or if you didn't like it, let me know in the comments. I want to know what people are thinking about this movie. I want to hear what people are saying. So thank you for tuning in for this movie's review. As always, I will see everyone next time. Thanks for watching.